Hello, welcome to Jerri Berry's Friend-Tastic Library. Today, we're not talking about everyday average people with their fantastic lives. Today, we're talking about boring old books. So, if you are on the Spotify version, you won't get my beautiful visuals that I've created, but you'll still hear all the good things. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see like all the cool stuff, like the spreads of my reading bullet journal because I'm like very, very proud of how they've turned out with all my taped in notes and drawings. I'm like obsessed with it. Anyways, today I'll go over my January reads. Back in 2021, I got a new job, and my job allows me to have headphones in, and I decided to go down the audiobook route. All the books that I'm going to talk about today were audiobook versions. I never enjoyed reading in my entire life. I always skirted around it and skated by. And then in college, I discovered audiobooks because it turns out you have to read in college sometimes. And I discovered audiobooks were better for me. I actually like absorb the information better. I envision the story in so much better detail. I don't get distracted. I don't fall asleep. Yeah, that's just like the way that I learn and absorb information better, and I'm entertained better that way. So every book that I talk about today, I did the audiobook version. So take that as you will. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with this, but either way, I'm going to go over my stats. Oh, I know where I was going to go with this. So I was able to read 20, I think I did 20 books in 6 months last year. From the time that I started my job until the end of the year, I did 20 books, which is the most books I've ever consumed in my entire life. I won't say read because some people think that audiobooks aren't reading. That's fine, whatever. So that's the most books I've ever consumed in my life. And then I was like, okay, I want to set good intentions and good goals for 2022. So I created this awesome reading journal that I am like in love with. It's such a creative outlet. I love it so much. And I love like all of its imperfections and taped in notes and doodles and stuff. I just love it. And then I was like, okay, so I think I can do a book a week. I can listen to one book a week for sure. And then January started, and I just like blazed through a bunch of books. I listened to 16 books in January, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it so much. I'm already coming in guns blazing for February because it's the second day of February, and I've already finished 2 books for February. So I decided that I'm going to do these videos, these podcasts each month that are just me solo talking about the books that I read. I really love listening to other YouTubers and podcasters talking about the books they like, because that way I can add books to my like read list. I ended up joining a book club thanks to a YouTuber. Shout out Plant-Based Bride. And she really inspired me to get into reading and doing the reading journal too. So yeah, without further ado, I will share my PowerPoint with you that I made because I'm a big nerd and I love making PowerPoints and sharing stats with people. So our January reads. I basically just started out with Reese's book club books, some books with a book that me and my sister wanted to read, a book with the Plant-Based Bride book club, and then from there just all the stuff that I liked. Like there were so many books that I had passed up as a kid because I wasn't enjoying reading and I wasn't good at reading physical books that I went back and visited. So I did 16 books in all. That's 4,744 pages, 131 hours of listening. And on average, it took me 4.4 days to finish a book. And then on average, I gave a 4.4 average star review. If you don't know me, then I should probably tell you that I am easily entertained whenever it comes to music, movies, TV shows, books. I can find a lot of things to like about a lot of things. So I'm probably not as realistic as some people might want me to be, or I'm not as critical as some people might want me to be. I've never come across a 1 or 2 star book yet. I have a couple of 3-star books this month. So anyways, the shortest book I read was The Mouse and the Motorcycle. You can laugh at me if you want. It's okay. I remember kids reading this book in elementary school, and I tried to read it and I couldn't get into it and didn't enjoy it because I didn't like reading physical books and I had really bad reading comprehension. So I decided to go back and revisit this really cute little kid story. No regrets. Super cute. I gave it a 4-star. And then the longest book I read was the book I read with my sister this month, and it's called The Witches of New York. I don't think she has finished this by the time I'm posting this video, so hopefully I do not spoil anything for her whenever I go over the review. But The Witches of New York is really, really good. So from there, some of the stats are like about the authors. So 62.5% were female and 37.5% were male. I was very proud of this stat because a lot of the really younger children, the middle grade books are mostly like white dudes. And I was, as I was reading, I was like, oh, I might not get a good percentage for gender. And it ended up going the opposite direction. I didn't get a nice 50-50 spread. I ended up doing more female than male. Not on purpose, it's just how it happened. Their nationality being like the country they are from, mostly American. That's just how books are, unfortunately. There aren't a lot of authors from other countries that are like out there enough. Like the media doesn't press their books enough. That's a whole other story. But anyways, yeah, so 11 from America, 2 from England, 1 from Australia, Canada, and Nigeria. And then their ethnicity. So we have mostly white. I'm changing that up for this month. For February, I'm reading as many books as I can from Black and African American authors because it's Black History Month. Whoop, whoop. So I'm hoping to get a better spread for next month for ethnicities. But you can see there's 2 African American, 1 Chinese. I believe one of them, my screen sharing button's in the way, is like Indian. I can't remember if she's Indian and there's like something else in there. I don't remember. Either way, you can probably see it and I can't. And then as far as the actual books themselves, they were mostly adult age, 18 and over. I am finding that I don't really enjoy young adult books. They're okay, but I find that the teen drama is like not my wheelhouse anymore. So it depends on the YA book, but sometimes it's just like too cheesy for me to do. The middle grade, I actually kind of enjoy like the playfulness of a lot of them. So yeah, and then I did a lot of those middle grade books, which is between the ages of 8 and 12. It's from ages 8 to 12. So those were the books that I was talking about before, where I kind of felt like I missed them growing up in school, or I only like half-ass read them to pass a class, and I wanted to go back and actually enjoy the stories. So then the genre breakdown, I go by like the literary genres, and I kind of classify them the best I can within those literary genres. So that's how those spread out. Most of them were children's literature, which is like the middle grade novels. They don't really fit into the literary genres separately, because almost every middle grade book is a fantasy technically. So they just kind of consider them children's literature. Yeah, I'm finding that I really love like romance thrillers and contemporaries. Contemporaries are, I learned, are kind of just like feel good stories. They don't really fall into fantasy, sci-fi, horror, romance. They're usually coming of age stories, feel good stories, those kinds of things. So yeah, and then I have this cool chart. I did not intend for it to look like this whenever I first created it, but that's how it happens, and I kind of liked it. But those are the published years. So you can see the 1925 book is The Great Gatsby, and then it goes on up all the way to 2022. I read a book that was published like literally this year, and I read it this year. So that was the Reese Witherspoon book club pick. 31.3% had LGBTQIA plus representation. I definitely want to like bump those numbers up. I feel like more books are representing it, and I think the only thing that drug my numbers down were all those middle grade books, because a lot of those old school books didn't have representation back then. Most of my books this time around I bought, and then I got some from Hoopla and Libby, and then that's changed for this month already because I was able to unlock more Libby books by having 2 different library cards. So SCORE, support your local libraries. You can rent ebooks and audiobooks for free on your phone. Never have to leave the house. It's wonderful. And then I had 8 5-stars, 6 4-stars, and 2 3-stars. And I'll go through all those. So yeah, these are all the books I read. All 16 of them are here. I think it looks like it. Yeah, my Gilded Wolves got cut off. These are also in red order. So I started with Gilded Wolves, went up to the Midnight Library, then the Mouse and the Motorcycle, went up to the Bridge to Terabithia, then the House and the Strolling Sea, and then 3 Wishes. So these are in the order that I finished them. The ones with the big red stars are my top 5 for the month. So the Gilded Wolves, I gave 3 stars. It was a young adult fantasy novel. I should pull out my notes for these. So I really liked the characters. There was a lot of good representation in this book. There was different like gender and sexual orientations, and there were people of color and people of different ethnicities. I learned that there's a character that's autistic, and I actually was never, I was listening to it, I identified with her, and then I found out that she was meant to portray like a person on the spectrum. So that was interesting. And it was the Plant-Based Bride book club pick. So it was nice to like have a group discussion about it. And I think I might end up reading more into the series because the character development was so good. I didn't really like the world building. They tried to set it in the 1800s, but it's a fantasy, so I feel like setting it in the 1800s is unnecessary. Anyways, the library book was an instant favorite for me. I feel like this needs to be like in every high school curriculum at this point. The library book is actually a nonfiction, and it is a woman that used to work for the New York Times, did all this research on a library fire in LA in the 80s. But the book just covers so many good things. I thought it was going to be a book that was literally just talking about the fire and how the fire started. And it talked about community, it talked about the importance of library, it talked about economic issues with homelessness, it talked about disparities and prejudices and biases. It had so much in it. I wrote down so many quotes from it because I loved it so much. I ended up writing down even more from it between that and like the Midnight Library, which was another favorite of mine. So yes, I think everybody needs to read it 100%. I would recommend it to anybody I ever pass on the street. So actually my favorite, I'll read my favorite quote from that one because I feel like it wraps up the book really well. So from the library book, I wrote down, the publicness of the public library is an increasingly rare commodity. It becomes harder all the time to think of a place that welcome everyone and don't charge any money for that warm embrace. And it's so true. I never really thought of it, and I never really appreciated libraries until I read this book because it is so incredibly true. Yeah, I could talk about this book all day. So to move on, Honor was amazing. Honor was the one that just came out this year in 2022 in January. It's by Thriti Umrigar, and it's about a lovely woman named Smita, and she has to go back to her hometown of Mumbai to help a friend with a report that's going on. And it talks a lot about the issues that go on in India to this day. It's a very current novel. It is fiction, but you can tell that the author is writing from some of her own experiences, in my opinion. And I was so deeply enthralled and connected into the story that I was like upset that life was still going on while the horrible things in this book were happening, because I felt like they were real people. Like it was so amazing to me. So it instantly became a favorite. I'll remember it the rest of my life. That was the Reese's book club pick this month. So, and then I got to Braving the Wilderness. I was like very torn with this book. I think the point of this book is to kind of trigger you sometimes or rub you the wrong way because it wants to push you out of that comfort zone of thinking. And the only reason I gave it 3 stars was because this is another nonfiction book. And I think Brene Brown is wonderful, but the whole like first hour or so of this book is her talking about how she never fit in anywhere. And I could not connect with her at all whatsoever for like the first hour-ish. It's only like 4 hours, I think. And since I couldn't really like connect with her on that level, I had a really hard time enjoying the book or absorbing what she had to say to the people. So I gave it 3 stars because I only enjoyed like the last half of it. I feel like the ending got better as it went on. She did have really good discussions about Black Lives Matter. I wrote down a super long quote that deals with Black Lives Matter. I'm going to read it because I feel like it's important. Shouldn't the rallying cry just be, hey, all lives matter? No, because humanity wasn't stripped from all lives the way it was stripped from the lives of Black citizens. Then she goes on to say, I believe Black Lives Matter is a movement to rehumanize Black citizens. All lives matter, but not all lives need to be pulled back into mortal inclusion. moral inclusion. And I felt like this section of the book goes on for a lot longer. I paraphrased it. I took a couple sentences, and it was so beautiful. It brought tears to my eyes. So the ending really redeemed it. I almost did not finish it because the first half was so hard for me to connect to. Such a Fun Age was a really nice, light read. Such a Fun Age is from the Reese's Book Club list, and it's written by an African-American woman. So it's just about a woman in her 20s finding herself. She's a babysitter for like a snooty white lady. What I loved about the book was that every character I could connect to every character, even though I hated a lot of them. Like, even whenever I hated the character, the author did such a good job of making them so real and normal that I could connect to them still, even though I hated them. So that one was fun. Not heavy, not super emotional. Definitely plays on very, very important issues in America with race and prejudices, but it wasn't like so heavy that I was like trying not to cry at work. So I liked it. I thought it was fun. The Midnight Library, I loved so much. The Midnight Library like is my favorite book by far this year. I will reread it probably 100 more times in my life. Anytime I'm like, I literally wrote it in my journal. Anytime you are feeling blue, feeling down, feeling lost, you need to revisit this book. I cannot say enough good words about it. I don't want to spoil anything at all for you because you need to just read it and absorb it. And I must say, I was skeptical about reading a book that was written by a guy, but the main character is a woman, because a lot of times I feel like they don't do a good job. No offense to guys. I feel like a lot of times they don't develop women characters very well, but this was so wonderful. This book was so wonderful. If I could give it 6 stars, I would. I loved it so much. The Midnight Library, you must read. If nothing else on this list interests you, you must read The Midnight Library. It is so amazing. I believe people are torn between calling it a fantasy and a science fiction. I consider it a science fiction, but I guess it depends on your beliefs. So if nothing else, please read The Midnight Library. Please, please, please. I literally will not say a word about it because I'm so weird about spoilers. And I feel like I was lucky enough to not have this one spoiled for me. And you need to go read it. Mouse and the Motorcycle. I don't really need to talk about it. There's a mouse, there's a motorcycle. For some reason, whenever the mouse is on the motorcycle, he can make it ride. He's pretty selfish and he's mean to the boy, but they make it all up in the end. Whatever. Miss Frisbee and the Rats of Nim. I love the movie The Secret of Nim. I remember reading most of this book in 7th grade and I wanted to revisit it. I believe that the book and the movie both separately are very good and very entertaining, and they are nothing alike. So don't think that if you saw the movie that the book is the same and vice versa. There's a lot of stuff in the movie that like does not happen in the book. Sankofa is another one that was written by a Black author. I believe she's Nigerian. I'd have to look back at my notes, but I'm pretty sure she's Nigerian. Yes, Nigerian. So it was definitely from that African perspective where she's in Britain. She finds a long lost journal of her dad who she never met, and she goes to Nigeria to try to find him and get to know him. I instantly loved it because she reads somebody's journal, and I am a big journaler, and I like love the idea that my kids and my grandkids and even beyond would like pick up my old journals one day and read them and like be like, oh, this was what her life was like. I love that idea. So I love that this author did that. I loved all the perspectives that I gained because I had no idea like what African culture was like. I never even thought about what it would be like to be of an African descent and then live in Britain. I loved the narrators. The person that read the audiobook, they did an excellent job with the accents. I felt like it was very authentic sounding. You know, I think I just gave it 4 stars because I knew that I would never pick it up again, and it didn't leave a huge impression on me. Like Honor, I will remember forever, and I was like so immersed and so sunk in. And Sankofa, it was like just one scooch from that, so I gave it a 4. But I think it might deserve a 5 depending on who you are. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I was surprised at how captivated I was at a middle grade book, and I hate myself for not reading it sooner as a kid. I know like anybody that was anybody back in the early 2000s in the library was checking out The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. and I just like could not get into books. I hated the movies. Like I could not get into them. I wanted to get into them. Tilda Swinton is like amazing, but I just did not like them. The book was perfection. I plan on reading the rest of the series. I had no idea that a middle grade book could captivate me and the writing could sink me in and make me visualize things so clearly and so perfectly. It was awesome. The Bridge to Terabithia, the book is just as heartbreaking as the movie. So if you've seen the movie, probably don't need to read the book. It'll just make you sad all over again. And there really isn't much difference between the book and the movie that I remember. I saw the movie one time, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, never watched it again. So that's the book. There you go. The House on the Strolling Sea is another red star for me, another easy favorite. I was instantly captivated. I love the representation. I love the radical acceptance in this book. And I think I wrote that in here. Let me see if I can find it. Yes, I did. I don't know that I wrote down a quote per se. Yes, but I did write down, I love the presence of radical acceptance and forcing the reader to consider their own biases, prejudices, and judgments. I love that each character is well developed and you can connect with them so easily. And I loved that. Every single character, even the small ones, are developed so well that I got such a clear picture of who they were and what they looked like. And they were all so very different and yet so connectable. And the book constantly pushed you to consider, why do you think this way? Why do you have this judgment against this person? And I loved it. It's just amazing. I love it. I love it so much. There was even like LGBTQIA plus representation in this book. Whoever the narrator is, I think it was Rainn Wilson. Rainn Wilson, I believe, was the reader for this audiobook. And whenever I found that out, I was amazed because his voices were so good. I had no idea that he could do that. I just know him as like the weird guy from The Office. So it was really, really, I love The House on the Cerulean Sea. Under the Whispering Door by the same author was actually on my list, and I could not find it at the library, and I didn't really want to spend any more money on books this month. So I did this one instead. And now I really want to listen to Under the Whispering Door because this one was just so good. The writing was amazing. If you follow me on social media, I posted a picture that I wrote down Sal's poem. I had to pause it and write it down because Sal's poem was just beautiful. I think I loved Sal so much. I still like miss him. I wish there was more that I could read about each of these characters because I love them so much. The Witches of New York I read with my sister, and then it got to a point where she's in school, so she didn't totally finish it yet. And I just was like on edge. I had to finish it. I couldn't wait any longer. So I'll try not to spoil anything for her, but it is super good. It is historical fiction. I think it's pretty true to being a historical fiction. And it is what it sounds like. It's about witches in New York in the 1800s. I believe it takes place in the 1800s. And it was just really enjoyable. I loved the twists and turns. I actually took a lot of notes on this because there was tons of character building and I didn't want to get it confused. I didn't want to get any characters confused because they were all so important. And it was one of those awesome stories where like they're all kind of out here and then they all start to come together. So I really felt like I had to like keep track of who everybody was. So I wrote down a lot of notes for this book in the beginning. But it is super good. That's why it got a red star. Not only is it a 5-star, but it's a top 5 for me for this month. There's a second book to this, and it's around Christmas time. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like The Witches of something, some other place, not New York, and it's around Christmas time. But it apparently it has the same characters in it. So I plan to read that this year, but probably closer to the holidays. The Phantom Tollbooth lives up to its name. To be honest, I love the show New Girl with Zooey Deschanel. And there's an episode where Jess is trying to have a one-night stand for the first time in her life. And for some reason, while they're in this bar or club trying to get her hooked up, Schmidt talks about the books. Oh, he talks about Outliers, 10,000 Hours. And then he says it's part of his list, his all-time book list. And he mentions the Phantom Tollbooth. And then Cece's like, oh, I love the Phantom Tollbooth, right? So I was like, well, now I need to watch it because if Schmidt says it's good and Cece says it's good, it's probably pretty good. And I had never heard of it. And I loved it so much. I printed the map out to like tape and put into my little reading journal so I could have the map of the world of the Phantom Tollbooth. It was just a really cute story of a little boy that goes into this world whenever he's feeling lost and like not sure who he is or what he should be. And I feel like I wrote all that down for this one too, so I'm just gonna find it. But I love that it just like questions reality the whole time. Like there's a dog named Talk, but the noise that he makes is a tick, and he's a watchdog. So he's a dog that's body is a watch. And there's a spelling bee. So it's a bee that spells out a bunch of words. Like there's a humbug, which is a bug that hums songs. I just loved everything about it. It was so cute and it kept my attention, and I was like giggling a lot. It was philosophical. There were like good philosophical questions like why do you grow up? That doesn't make any sense. It makes more sense to grow down. And like then there's like the smallest giant in the world and the tallest small person in the world, and like I don't know, I loved all of it. I didn't know that a middle grade book could be so funny, and I completely understand why it gets the hype. It deserves all of the hype. I've always wanted to read The Great Gatsby, so I squeezed that in. It's a super short one, just like the Phantom Tollbooth. I think they're each about 4 hours to listen to. They're only like 200 pages. So they're good short reads. The Great Gatsby lived up to the name. I see why it's a classic. It's one of those books again where the characters are like horrible people, but the author writes them in such a way where they're like they're connectable because they're like the extremes of normal. It's like I can connect to that bad person because I know that I've been a bad person at times in my life. It's one of those moments, and I loved it. I love them. So I watched the Great Gatsby movie with Leo and Tobey Maguire whenever it came out in 2013, and I wanted to read the book ever since. And I think that that movie adaptation, I haven't seen any other adaptations, but that movie adaptation did really, really good. The book is short, so I feel like it's easy to make a movie out of it. But yeah, I had really good imagery while I was listening to it. I enjoyed all of the characters. My absolute favorite quote from the movie and from the book is whenever Daisy's telling the narrator that, you know, she had a girl and that she hopes that she'll be a fool, because that's the best thing a girl can be in this world, a beautiful little fool. And I love that. I think it explains the sadness of women and everything so well. Like I still think it holds up to this day. Yeah, I don't want to get on a soapbox about the patriarchy, but anyways, I decided to finish out the month with three wishes by Leanne Moriarty. Leanne Moriarty is the author of the audiobook that first got me into audiobooks, and I've read every book since. I first listened to The Husband's Secret back in college for an English class where it was English literature. So we had to read a lot of, that's where I was like, I'm going to have to get audiobooks because I can't get through any of these books. I don't have time. I can't read. I don't remember what I'm reading. So I bought The Husband's Secret audiobook and I fell in love with it, and I fell in love with audiobooks. And Leanne Moriarty always has such a fascinating way of writing about like normal everyday life, like just normal, messy, dramatic, shitty life that everybody goes through. But she writes it in such a way that like keeps you on your toes and keeps you interested. There's always like a good twist, or there's like a big accident or a big incident, or you're always she just always builds up to this big event that's wonderful. I only have one more book to read by her, and it's The Last Anniversary. Other than that, I've finished her whole catalog. If you've never heard of anything else, she wrote Big Little Lies, the book Big Little Lies, and I watched the first season after I read the book. I thought the show was really, really good, and I think they did a good job for what the book was. It's awesome that it's filmed right here in Monterey, California. Well, some of it. They have some good Monterey, California shots. Not all of it's filmed here, though. She also wrote 9 Perfect Strangers. The show, I think, is better than the book. I know that's not a popular opinion with book readers, but I thought 9 Perfect Strangers was better on TV than on paper. If you're interested in Leanne Moriarty's work, I always recommend What Alice Forgot. What Alice Forgot was one of my all-time favorite books last year that I read, and it's so wonderful. So yeah, that's all the books I read. I had a lot of fun. and I had a lot of fun talking about them with you all, and I really hope that you enjoyed them. If you're on Spotify, I hope that you got enough out of this to make your own decisions. But if you're missing out on all the pretty graphs and presentation I made, then you can go over to YouTube and watch it. I'll stop sharing. But yeah, if you're interested in looking at a flip through of my reading journal, let me know. I can always post a video of just me flipping through my reading journal because I already have February started and I'm already working on it. Yeah, I think that's it. I do have a Patreon. It's very new. I'm still learning. I'm not in this for the money. I'm in it for fun because I like talking. I like talking to people. And now I like listening to audiobooks and I like talking about audiobooks. So it's definitely just a hobby. But if you're interested in being a Patreon, then you get access, like early access to videos. You can be on the Discord, all that fun stuff. Yeah. I also have an Amazon wish list. All of it's always in the description below. I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope you guys enjoy future monthly reading stats. I hope you enjoy my weekly podcast episodes with my guests because I love talking to people so much and I'm learning so many cool things from people that I talk to. And yeah. So in February, I started out with a goal of 7 and I've bumped that up to 12 because I've already completed 2 books out of the 7 and because I read so many last month. And so far, the 12 books on my list are all written by authors that identify as Black, African American, or some type of person of color that has, like mixed ethnicities. So I'm very excited about that. I am really, 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 really enjoying books from all of these different ethnic backgrounds and all of these different people because I feel like I have gained so much perspective through so many different people's eyes that I never got on TV or on music. Like I had no idea that there was this whole world out there of these books as a form of entertainment that just opened your eyes to what all different types of people feel and see and experience every day. I love it. And I'm so happy that I found audiobooks. I'm so happy. I know there's going to be purists. There's going to be gatekeepers and purists whenever it comes to reading. And they're going to say that like, I'm not reading or I'm not doing it right or I'm not doing it authentically or however you want to phrase it. And that's fine. You can feel that way. Judge if you will, but I'm loving it and I'm enjoying it and I enjoy and love sharing it with you. And I think that audiobooks have opened up books to like a whole group of people that can't enjoy a book on paper or an ebook where you're on a tablet. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. Yeah. Comment down below if you have any questions. Comment down below if you have any suggestions of books I should read. Comment down below if you don't agree with what I said because I love discussing things. Yeah, comment if you want to see more of my bullet journal, my reading journal stuff. And I'll catch y'all in the next one. Okay, bye.